Greetings, ghosts and ghouls, and welcome to Bad Boo, a podcast conjured for the curious where we explore all things frights, flicks, and folklore.
We are your haunting hosts, Sam and Jodie, guiding you through every episode of occult exploration and holding your hand the whole way through.
So if you like the sound of spooks, screams, and symphonies, keep listening as we unravel our mystic matter for this week.
In today's episode, we'll be delving into the origins of witchcraft and its elusive history.
Ooh, so I say we go back to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone's here to want to know what is a witch?
A witch is broadly defined as a practitioner of witchcraft. That typically means using magical powers, and that was thought to be for malevolent purposes back in the olden days, basically. However, more modern meanings include things that are associated with pagan religions and spiritualist beliefs, like Wicca, for example, as they use magic for spiritual growth and other positive things like self-empowerment. However, the word can also mean a fascinating woman or a wicked woman.
Very contrasting.
Yeah, very contrasting indeed.
Yeah, that's
kind of rude.
It is. That's how I see it as well.
Fancy calling someone a witch.
Yeah, you're either fascinating or wicked.
Yeah, not very nice at all.
So obviously during the 16th century there was an uprise of affordable printing, which allowed for a mass production of pamphlets.
And that is where we got the traditional witch idea from, right?
Absolutely. Black robes,
pointy hats,
cauldrons, and it often stemmed from the idea of, and promoted the fact that witches had relations to the devil.
And goddesses like Hecate as well.
Absolutely.
As that was associated with divination and practices that were seen as devil worshipping at the time.
Yeah, and the stereotype of the pointy hats that we were just alluding to earlier actually arose from anti-Semitic prejudice against Jewish people.
That is actually insane. I can't believe that just because another religion didn't like it, they created an entirely new stereotype to project onto people that they wanted to basically attack.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
This is during medieval Europe, and Jewish people were forced to wear pointy hats called the Judenhut to identify Jewish people and say, that is a Jewish person right there.
I know, that's so wild.
And that prejudice of a Jewish person having relations to Satan and practicing satanic rituals and all this stuff,
purely because it wasn't the beliefs of the people in power at the time.
It's crazy.
Absolutely insane.
Prejudice has been around for years, still exists in different forms now, obviously, but to think that the whole witch stereotype stemmed from a prejudice, it's mad.
It is bad, but that is why it's so important now that cultures like Wicca are kind of reclaiming what their older practices were and bringing them to a newer modern audience and pushing it as a positivity group and making people feel really included in that, especially with platforms like TikTok as well.
Yeah,
you can just type in Wicca and people will come up with informational videos, people will come up with spells or just teaching you about lunar cycles and things like that, because it's all very nature based. So it's really good that obviously there are different ways now to express yourself instead of being labelled with a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is witchcraft?
Well, going back to the point that everybody is here to kind of talk about, where we said before that a witch is described as a practitioner of witchcraft, we need to know what witchcraft is, right?
Absolutely.
So witchcraft is deemed the practice of magical arts and is broadly defined as using supernatural or occult powers for various purposes. So that means that from harming people to healing people, or even self-empowerment or connecting with nature, historically the term, no matter what it was being used for, was given the overarching kind of use of magic for misfortune or for malevolent reasons. And that belief led to all of the witch hunts and executions that are famously known across the globe.
Absolutely.
And again, that's why it's so important now that that idea is changing with practices such as Wicca, which you'll hear me mentioning quite a lot, as that's the common associated one, because Wicca derives from the culture of Wiccan, which is actually associated with the word witch and where that came from.
Yeah.
And that's all because it's often involving spiritual and empowering and benevolent magical activities like spell casting and divination and having a deep connection with nature and all the cycles that follow that. So that's what's making this old stereotype diminish.
Yeah, I mean, the stereotype's there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this is what has existed, and this is how it can be reinterpreted.
Yeah,
I suppose, and I think that's quite an important thing to have.
it is very important, especially where now that kind of witch idea is obviously very commercialized.
It is. Halloween costumes.
Yeah,
One of these staple
exactly.
Halloween costumes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think, you know, one of the first like feature film / media adaptations of a witch was like in The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the typical classic stereotype.
Yeah.
And most Halloween costumes and, you know, movies, you know, it's evolved
Yeah.
massively.
100%.
So, you know, you need
It
to
does
look where.
beg the question though,
Yeah.
of where this all comes from.
Exactly.
Where does witchcraft come from?
Yeah. So some stems of witchcraft are thought to trace as far back as ancient shamanic practices
Mm-hmm.
and the use of magic in classical antiquity.
So that was basically like Greek cultures and Roman cultures
Mm-hmm.
and that entire time, which is obviously the kind of foundations of civilization, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that it goes back that far is insane.
Yeah. And like early modern Europe,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of witchcraft was largely a construct created by the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
which linked it to, you know, the devil, black magic, and it fueled like a widespread witch hunt
Yeah.
across England, Europe. You know, it was massive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea of witches took a massive sort of hold upon people
Yeah.
and a fear.
Well, it's obviously been around for like absolute centuries, and even to the earliest points of civilization, like we were saying with the Greeks and the Romans, it's absolutely insane that it started there, and it even was in places like Mesopotamia, which was like the original kind of, well, one of the original groups of civilization. It's got the same kind of ideologies as like Babylon as like a starting place.
Yeah.
And Egypt as well, which is obviously that's still around nowadays. It's still very heavily involved with religion and things like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it just proves really that like nothing really changes with these things. Like the names of things change, but where they come from and where they are doesn't change.
Yeah. And you had like figures in, you know, old sort of Greek books and novels, like in Homer's Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, characters that represent early ideas of witches and laws against harmful magic.
Yeah.
So, you know, that existed even like way like BC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the idea of a witch has been around for centuries and centuries and centuries, but it's evolved over time.
Exactly.
As it's come, you know, it's reared often its ugly head back when, you know, when there's a little bit of a stir up.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when that was kind of predominant in Europe.
Yeah.
And it being heavily populated by the paganist like community.
Yeah.
With the uprising of like Christianity, because it involved beliefs that were associated with nature and spirits and having a connection to that. It was the complete opposite of what Christianity was kind of formed on.
Yeah.
So as soon as we went into like medieval times and it was the Catholic Church that was taking over areas like England, it was just an absolute bloodbath.
It was.
After that, like literally and metaphorically, unfortunately.
Yeah. It was, like I said, it was massive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was such a, you know, the association with the devil again was like where it all came from.
Yeah.
In like England and, you know, any sort of Catholic followed country / people.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that word was out about the idea of a witch, everyone would follow it. And, you know, that's, you know, where it all came from, 14th century onwards.
Mm-hmm.
It was a massive belief, and the fear was so stark and widespread. You know, like you said, it just led to all these horrible bloodbath.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible.
And to think that that was only like 300 years ago, this is like the 14th century, is not that long ago.
Yeah.
Really?
No. I mean, like you say, it ended in like, about 300 years ago, like in terms of when it sort of started fizzling off and it sort of started diminishing the idea.
Yeah.
But it went all the way back to the 1400s in like Europe and colonial America. You know, it's seen that an estimated 35,000 to 60,000 people were executed in Europe and British America. So between the 15th and 18th century this was.
And that number even speculates to over 90,000 people, because they're not actually, because there wasn't obviously any records of the deaths like that were kept from that time.
Not
there are
as we know
records,
now.
but not for all of them. Yeah.
So that's like a very rough estimate.
That
but
we're never going to have a concrete number on.
No, but that's still, that figure is ginormous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, crazy.
Which leads us to getting into the actual trials themselves, as that's what all of this hysteria kind of led to. So the witch trials were actually legal proceedings where people were accused of practicing witchcraft, and because it was an evil magic that was believed to have associations with the devil, they were instantly taken to court for like formal legal proceedings that would either result in persecutions or prosecutions, which could even mean death. Yeah,
as straight up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no choice. That was the answer.
Yeah.
And you know, these trials occurred during, you know, periods of religious upheaval, war, societal stress. You know, people sought explanations for misfortune. So it was sort of, you know, because as human beings, we always like to try and find an answer to, you know, misfortunes or things that go wrong.
Especially in a time of like fear and superstition.
You know, Catholicism was absolutely massive. It was, you know, the whole country of, you know, England and, you know, large parts of Europe were built off of the Catholic faith.
Yeah,
you know,
and
through and through.
Large bits of America as well. It was like
absolutely
huge.
Not just Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it still is one of the biggest, and I think maybe even the biggest religion to date.
I'd say so. You know, and it was reinforced, these ideas, through a manual essentially that was that came out, you know, a little bit before all of this prejudice started beginning, all the way back in 1486, as a book titled Malleus Maleficarum, which is aka the Hammer of Witches, which is written by Heinrich Kramer.
Who was Heinrich Kramer?
He was a German churchman who wanted to improve witch hunting methods. And like I said earlier, it's essentially a manual that people went off of to, you know, identify witches, and, you know, it provided the foundations of witch accusations.
That's like completely insane to me. Imagine
so
like,
influential.
Writing a book and handing it out saying like, this is who you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's like a wanted sign, but in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
It's like absolutely insane.
Phone a witch, you know?
What's even crazier though, when we were researching, is obviously Kramer was a German churchman, but over in England it was actually King James I who had been greatly interested in witchcraft before he took his reign as the King of England.
It's a real passion of his and fascination.
And that he took his reign in 1603, so this was just before that, in the 1300s, that he actually wrote a book called Daemonology, and that was instructing readers on how to condemn and prosecute supporters and practitioners of witchcraft.
So it's not even people that did it, it was people that even tried. Could have been people that stuck up for their families, loved ones, supported everything, and they would be condemned as well.
And at this time, this was even people that were like healing others. So it was, most of the accused individuals in these situations were women.
Absolutely.
Because they were seen as like property at the time.
Yeah.
Like not really allowed to have an opinion.
It's when they stepped, you know, seen to, you know, step out the margins of what was right.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be seen as, there's something wrong with you.
Yep.
You know, you know, though, you know, men and children were also targeted. You know, with the youngest being a 4-year-old girl
I know, that's so devastating.
called Dorothy Good. However, she was never charged, but she spent nearly 9 months in jail until her father was able to pay her jailing costs, while her mother remained incarcerated, eventually giving birth to her sister Mercy, who passed away from malnourishment and harsh conditions before the execution of her mother Sarah in 1692.
So bad. So even though she wasn't like actually convicted of anything,
Yeah.
well, how would you even be convicted of anything as a 4-year-old?
Yeah. Because there was that association with the mother, wasn't it?
Exactly, but still you're scarred so much from living in prison, seeing your like sibling die,
And your mother
and then your mother as soon as you're out.
traumatized, and knowing that she was going to be executed for something that, you know, very likely wasn't
Could
true.
even be proven. Yeah.
And it wasn't proven. And, you know, reportedly, Dorothy was traumatized by her ordeal, and
no
she never
wonder.
recovered.
Yeah.
And she suffered from mental health issues for the rest of her entire life.
But even mental health issues at that time would deem you to be
Insane. You're immediately
You get put in bedlam.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was like absolutely. It's crazy to think that like civilization nowadays derived from places like this.
Yeah.
And people like this.
Living on the grounds of this sort of foundation.
It's absolutely crazy.
You know, it's where, you know, we learn what's right and wrong to hopefully guide a better future. But often, you know, things get worse, and good and bad will always exist. But this, you know, this is just one example.
Yeah.
You know, who knows, you know, all the other mental health issues for all the people convicted as witches that, you know, solely believed they were not. How terrible is that?
Or even the mental health issues that people would be suffering, and then they'd be accused of these things.
Yeah.
Obviously, schizophrenia wasn't actually like known as a
It wasn't
kind
like
of
a
mental
diagnosed-
issue back then. So
yeah.
easily people could just label you as a witch, and they could like kill you or torture you or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And, you know, accusations could stem from personal disputes, neighbourly conflict, fear of the unfamiliar, and accused individuals were sometimes subjected to torture or ordeals such as the swim test to determine guilt.
It's so sickening.
Yeah.
And even when they did or didn't pass these tests, they were just often executed, and the punishment was typically to be burned at the stake, as that was a very common punishment in the majority of the regions at the time. And it also, I believe it mentions in one of the older versions of the Bible that in order to rid the world, or rid like a human soul of the devil and those types of things, that burning is the best way to kind of approach that. So that was why people carried it out so much at that time, which is so cruel.
You think often a lot of these people may not have been bad people. They were consumed by fear and this ideology that was set by them, you know, by their leaders.
Yeah.
You know, and they had to essentially follow it.
Well, a lot of the people that were actually convicted of being witches were people like midwives.
Yeah.
As they were having to like help people in medical fields and things like that.
Yeah.
So like any type of female medical practitioner was deemed as a witch because they were doing kind of miraculous things that to help people.
They didn't believe that women could do such a thing.
Yeah,
back in
they
that
didn't
day,
believe that
you know?
women could help people.
Whereas like nowadays, you know, it's often, you know, you often switch it
Yeah.
around. You know, you think of midwives, you often think of women and how amazing they are.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
my mum, for example, midwife in practice, you know, years, and you know, just done wonders for people.
Well, bringing so many lives into the world.
Yeah.
And helping so many women cope through things that, like, only women can ever truly understand that experience.
Yeah.
And to be labelled or deemed a witch because of it back in these times, it's absolutely, like, barbaric.
And I was
the things that they would, like, do.
And I was thinking earlier, like, it's crazy to think that my own mum, if this was back then, would have been accused of being a witch.
Well, even, like, myself, with the things that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a bit different, like, your mum obviously being a midwife. Even with the practices that I do now, about, like, reading tarot and having crystals and being like fascinated by the occult and all those types of things, easily I would have been one of the first people to be accused of being a witch.
Yeah.
Which, that's your girlfriend and your mum gone
Yeah.
in like 2 seconds. We're both in prison.
Yeah, and I'd be a supporter of it, and I'd be gone too.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like we're all going down.
And then we would all have to face these tests.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure everyone is very eager to know, in a weird way, what are these tests that people used to put?
yeah, well they say
through?
tests, but they were actually torture techniques to see if
Absolutely.
people were witches or not.
It was a test to see whether
Mhm.
you are a witch and whether you're not. And
Yeah.
often with all of these tests, the outcome would be the same.
Yeah.
You would die,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. It was a very, very sad way for people to go.
Which leads us on to the very first one, which is what people kind of gonna know the most about because this is the most spoken about method.
Sickeningly iconic.
The swimming test or trial by water. And basically how this worked was the accused person's hands and feet were bound together and they were then tossed into a body of water. For other ones where they weren't actually bound like by their hands and their feet, they were tied to chairs or they were tied to rocks and then they were tossed into a body of water or a river or things like that. And the belief was that witches were thought to reject baptism and water from holy places. So after the water had been kind of blessed and all these things, if they were a witch, their body would reject the water, causing them to float to the top. And if they were not a witch and they were actually innocent, then they would sink to the bottom. However, too many times than not, they would drown before they would get rescued.
Yeah. So the outcome was it was dreadful.
Yeah.
It always ended in the same demise, more times than not. And if they were rescued, you think about the mental scar that would leave on them, and the prejudice against them, and the opinions of the town. I don't know whether people would actually, people would be speculative for the rest of their life.
To even have one of these accusations would absolutely destroy your career
Reputation.
and your reputation. Like,
Yeah.
it was completely like soul destroying, and it would completely tear apart your life entirely.
Yeah. And there was obviously other tests. So there was the prayer test, which, the accused had to recite the Lord's Prayer and or other religious texts absolutely perfectly from memory, and witches were thought to be unable to speak scripture correctly due to their pact with the devil, which, making one single mistake reciting, any of these religious texts was proof of witchcraft.
Which again is completely like absolutely brain baffling. If you had a stutter,
you're dead.
You're dead. No chance. If you were older and you were a woman and you had maybe Alzheimer's or anything like that and you just couldn't remember it off the top of your head,
You're dead.
You're dead. If you're a child and you haven't learned it yet,
You're dead.
And also this is what hit me when we found out this fact. A lot of people at the time couldn't read. This is a period where reading wasn't like a huge thing.
Yeah, back in the 15th century, and in those set of centuries, it was often
a privilege
an upper class sense of like if you were able to read basic English, you were seen as very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
And it was, like you said, it was a complete privilege.
Often only kept within ties of the royal family if you were, or like the royals of your kind of kingdom or area at that time.
It's because texts and books weren't widely, accessible.
Yeah. And
you couldn't print copies, or you couldn't, you didn't have all of like text in front of you.
Yeah. But also word of mouth was just such a huge thing back then.
Yeah.
So it was like as soon as one person said something, everybody else would spread like wildfire. Exactly.
Communities were so close, and they had to be. You had to work together to survive.
Yeah.
And it just goes around. Like nowadays with social media, often something, one little thing with a celebrity, essentially would just fly around social media. One little rumor, bam, could ruin someone's reputation.
Yeah.
In a very different form, but it's again the same concept.
It's just, the more that we read this and the more that we get into it, the more my heart just absolutely sinks.
I know.
Because it's so
It's crazy to think it's part of human
It is,
history.
It is just crazy. That's the only way that I can describe it. And to think that this was real. These are real people with real experiences.
Yeah.
That actually had to go through this. The next kind of test that we are talking about is the pricking test. And that is basically where investigators would use needles to prick the skin of the accused, searching for witch marks, which like is a very big in quotation marks thing, because what is that?
What is a witch mark?
And these witch marks were just spots that were insensitive to pain or that didn't bleed. So they basically believed that these marks were believed to come from witches, like familiar, like spirits or things that would be stuck to them, and that they would suck the blood out of these witches, so that's why they wouldn't bleed. And it was where the devil had made his mark. So if you had like a mole, which Sam, you would be screwed.
Let's put it this way, I'd be absolutely well and truly effed.
You're like a dot to dot.
I am.
In a beautiful way, you're like a dot to dot.
Yeah. You know, I'm a dot to dot witch, essentially.
And, like even
somehow.
Birthmarks and things like that.
Yeah.
I've got a huge birthmark on the inside of my leg.
Yeah.
It's genuinely half the size of your palm.
Yeah.
It's massive, and
It was evidence of
I would be
witchcraft.
screwed.
Yeah.
But also, who's to say that they wouldn't do that by like stretch marks?
Stretch marks.
That could easily be something.
Any mark that wasn't like plain, smooth.
If you had a scar that didn't heal.
Yeah. Because often scars don't bleed.
Yeah.
It's not like a spot or anything like that. Which is like likely where, you know, the old wart idea and stereotype came from.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of skin.
Yeah.
That sort of devilish looking skin. Gross.
And it just adds to the whole thing of being an outcast. Like anybody that didn't fit into their society, whether it was like through being a woman or having different beliefs, or even not looking exactly how they want you to, like having these marks and stuff, led them to casting you out and accusing you of these things.
Yeah. It leads us on to the final test that we've gathered, which is the touching test, which, you know, an accused witch was made to touch a person suffering from fits or a mysterious ailment. And the belief was if you touched, you know, if the accused bodies turn, you know, the belief was that if touching the accused person's body caused them to be suddenly cured, it proved the witch was responsible for their affliction, and a positive result in this test was considered proof of guilt once again.
Oh, it just...
Out of fear, people could quite easily fake that.
Yeah.
You know, could quite easily fake a fit on the floor or a sickness and have this, you know, supposed witch
exactly
touch you, and you suddenly go, oh, I'm feeling all right now.
And for people that use, like, you know, nowadays people can like pretend that they're dead, like, you know, when like you hold your breath and
you just
like,
lay there like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like it slows your heart or anything. Obviously doctors weren't like huge like medical practitioners back in these days, like
obviously didn't have the technology.
yeah,
and
not like
knowledge
they are now. So, and they used to misdiagnose people all the time. Even in the Victorian era, after this, people were misdiagnosed as being dead.
Yeah.
So all it took was like one person just pretending to be dead or pretending to be sick.
Yeah.
And saying, oh, this was done by so and so because I don't like them.
Yeah.
And then, et voila, you're a witch. You're about to be tried and tested and even like murdered.
You're done for.
Yeah.
In a roundabout sense.
Just for like this, and it could be simple things like getting into an argument with your husband, or looking at somebody wrong.
Yeah. Or
in
just
the street.
Being in quote unquote out of place.
Yeah.
You know, one of these things could lead to any of these so-called tests. You know, which often resulted in certain trials.
Yeah.
And over the years, there's been, you know, very famous trials. So.
And like we said, those trials led to deaths of up to 60,000 and possibly even
more.
90,000
Crazy.
across the Americas and Europe.
You know, if you live in the UK, that is about the capacity of Wembley Stadium.
Which is
absolutely nuts.
Even more mind-blowing.
Most large-scale stadiums in the UK, if you filled the whole thing up with people, that's the amount of people that were executed. Not even, you know, trialed.
Across the Western world.
Yeah.
Let alone, like, Asia and Africa and other continents where this does exist. Like, witchcraft is something that's across so many different cultures.
It's worldwide.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in just Europe, that amount of people, you know, there's obviously many people that have survived and many people that were tried and didn't go forth to an execution.
Mm-hmm.
This was the people that did die by being accused of a witch.
And out of those unfortunate murders that did occur, because they were murders at the end of the day.
Of course they were.
We have the two kind of infamous witch trials that happened worldwide. The first of them, which you're probably going to guess before I even say it, is the Salem witch trials, which happened in America in 1692.
Yeah, this is, you know, one of the most famous and well documented witch trials in history, which led to the conviction and execution of many, many people accused of witchcraft.
Yeah, there were, I believe, 20 people in total who were executed, 19 of those being by hanging, and one of them being pressed to death by stones.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Stones.
Yep.
It's like crushed,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
That's like, I was going to say it's a medieval torture technique, but at the time that was just a torture technique.
Yeah, it was not medieval.
Not considered medieval, that was just what they come up with at the time.
It's just, yeah. And, you know, there'd be people that would be witness to these.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's mad. And obviously it was so significant in the history of witchcraft persecutions, you know, often considered the Salem of Britain due to its public imagination historical significance.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just massive.
Yeah.
That was one of the big trials, one of the mass trials that made up all of these, this figure, that horrible, ghastly figure of, you know, 60,000 people.
And people obviously say that Salem is still haunted by the spirits of these women.
Yeah.
Whether it's in good ways or in bad ways, as I'm like, from the research that I've seen before, there are positive and negative spirits in the town of Salem.
Yeah.
But it's still, like, you hear Salem and you think Salem witch trials. Yeah. It's such a...
It's got horror-esque associations with it.
Yeah.
You know, or spiritual / supernatural associations.
Yeah, it's always going to have that kind of shaping around it of these awful things that happened.
Yeah, you know, and I also think of Salem's Lot, which is a novel by Stephen King, obviously about vampires, but yeah, it's still got that connotation of horror. That is what it is. So,
and no wonder, because these things were so horrific that were happening there.
Yeah, you know, and there was obviously another really famous witch trial that happened a little bit before,
and it was in England this time.
In England in 1612, called the Pendle Witch Trials, which you also may have heard of, which is a series of trials involving 12 people from Pendle Hill in Lancashire, who are accused of murdering 10 people using witchcraft. And, you know, 10 of the accused were found guilty, allegedly, and executed. And, you know, these are among the most famous in English history, and again are, you know, very well documented, with their story retold in many forms of media, you know, making the area a centre for heritage tourism related to witchcraft. So again, it's one of these places that people come to, you know, for the demise of other people, that becomes famous and legendary for such an awful thing that happened, yet so culturally influential in a sick way. Yeah.
Now, we won't go into these trials while we are here, just because there is a lot of information and a lot of it is very, very gruesome.
Yeah.
So even though we have touched on obviously very gruesome topics, but if you do want to go and look at those afterwards, then feel free to. There is so much information on both of these things.
Yeah.
And they were very, very prevalent kind of things that happened that sculpted the way people understood religion after this, because they were such horrific events that occurred.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, again, there should be another test for our viewers right now. Just to see how quickly you can subscribe or follow us.
Yeah.
You know, hit the bell. Don't want to miss another Bad Boo episode where we'll be delving into many, many more topics. And
don't forget
subjects.
To follow us on Instagram as well, and TikTok
at Bad Boo Productions. And if you want to hear some more gruesome or scary subjects / stories,
Or if you do want us to get more into these gruesome things that we're not telling you on the podcast today,
we have a Patreon page / community,
where
which is
we'll
now
be,
live, called the Boo Crew.
and the Boo Crew is going to be the place where we get into all the nitty gritty with you.
Yeah, we reading some scary stories that we feel we can't, I don't think's right on the podcast, but yet, real hardcore fans, if you want to listen to these type of things and any stories that we find or that you send us,
Yep.
happily read on there. Live Q&As, live sessions, scary story readings, film reviews, you name it, all the great horror classic stuff.
You name it, we got it.
We got it. So Boo Crew on Patreon, link in the description,
And it's less than a coffee.
and it costs less than a cup of coffee a month. So go and tell your nan, go and tell all the witches you know.
You guys don't understand that your nans really love these things.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that your nan is a witch, just saying she will love hearing about witches.
Yeah, of course you will.
Which leads us on to the next section,
Mm-hmm.
the Isle of Fright.
So, for this episode's Isle of Fright story, we have the story of a lady called Molly Downer, who is named as the last witch of the Isle of Wight and the Witch of Bembridge.
So Molly Downer was a historical figure from the early 19th century and gained a local reputation as a witch in Bembridge on the Isle of Wight, which is on the east side of the island.
Mm-hmm.
Folklore and local stories portray her as a reclusive woman whose actions and way of life led her neighbours to believe she practiced witchcraft. That happened on our very doorsteps.
Mm-hmm. It's
That's
not very far away, is it?
No, and the Isle of Wight has a massive history for witchcraft, supernatural things, as you may have heard in our last episode, which is about the origin of horror. So if you
Yep.
haven't heard that one, go and check that one out as well. But we've gathered some key details about our good witch friend Molly Downer.
So Molly was kind of known as the last white witch, and that's because she was the speculated last witch on the Isle of Wight. Obviously, all of the formal witch trials that did happen had already been outlawed in England by the time that she lived, as this was believed to happen in the early 19th century.
Absolutely.
Wait, 19th century is the 1800s or the 1900s?
It is the 1800s.
So this was actually the 20th century. So Molly Downer was actually known as the last white witch, and that is because she was renowned as the last witch that was actually on the Isle of Wight. This happened after witches and witch trials had kind of already been outlawed in England, as this happened in the early 20th century. So her persecution was driven purely by local prejudice and superstition at the time, rather than the legal proceedings that had happened with previous witch trials and accusations many, many years before.
So all the legal stuff had been dropped, and yet obviously there'd be people that would still linger the idea and the fear of witches.
Yeah, exactly.
And
for Molly here, it was unfortunately bestowed upon her.
it was, and she lived in a thatched cottage in the hamlet of Hilway, which is near Bembridge, which is a larger town on the Isle of Wight. And the cottage is now known as the Witch's Hatch. By all accounts, she became a reclusive figure in her later years, and she may have been the illegitimate daughter of a local reverend from a wealthy smuggling family, which would have made her an outsider.
But nobody knew if she was from a reverend or if she was from a smuggling family. But either way, that was frowned upon.
Yeah.
Because being obviously the illegitimate daughter of a reverend is completely against beliefs.
Yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yeah, that's very controversial.
Yeah, and obviously smuggling just isn't seen as a very righteous or prideful career to have.
No, it isn't.
So either way, for her, it just wasn't going very well.
No, it was quite quite the demise already. And despite her reputation as a witch, some people, including the village schoolmaster, also believed that she possessed healing or charming powers for minor illnesses, which again, like we said, the idea of midwives being healers was seen as a witch.
However, even though there were claims that she was a healer, she was apparently devastatingly betrayed by a close friend of hers, and it led to her close society completely renouncing her as one of its members.
Yeah.
And this was because one of the claims that comes from the folklore is that people who would go into her house and were lucky enough to actually visit it claimed that there were dolls with pins in them that were arranged in her cottage, and that there were bottles containing peculiar fluids that were hung from the ceiling, and that there were tools for curses and dark magic. And she was even accused of cursing a woman who had been harassing her at the time, who was called Harriet. And Harriet had shortly died after inheriting some money from one of the passings in her family. However, Harriet passed before she was even able to get it, and people believed that was her fulfilling Molly's curse that she had placed on her.
This is crazy. And talking about the dolls that were being arranged in her cottage with the pins, that's again going into the voodoo sort of stuff and dark magic. That's whether it's something that she believed in, or whether it was something that was put upon her by people having beliefs about her, that she started actually genuinely believing that she was a witch. It remains a mystery. And again, according to some versions of the folklore, she was subjected to cruel, informal witch trials by the local villagers of Bembridge / the Isle of Wight. And
one of them was the swim test,
which is, the most famous sort of test where, most people, when they think about witches being tried, is can you float? Can you not? Type thing. And she was also fed a witch cake, which was made by her hair and blood. And she survived all of the ordeals, but her reputation was permanently damaged, which, like we said earlier, even if you survive all of these things, again, the accusation can completely destroy your reputation.
Yeah.
Especially in a small place like the Isle of Wight, local communities, and the population would have been really small.
Well, even nowadays, like, word of mouth spreads like wildfire because it's such a close-knit community over here. So
absolutely.
If that happened back then, can you imagine how, like,
devastating
it would be? That's the only word to describe it.
Just, it's like, again, the Isle of Wight's notorious for a lot of words spreading around very quickly, because there's only a little over 100,000 people. It's in the 100,000s in terms of population, and back then it would have been way less.
Well, think about it this way: what we were saying earlier about the numbers of people that could have been killed, and that speculative 90,000.
Yeah,
that's nearly the entire population of the island.
The Isle of Wight today.
That would have been wiped out by witch trials.
It's mad.
Absolutely crazy.
And it just proves that it was everywhere. Even the Isle of Wight, obviously not as accessible back then. And obviously you had boats and all of these things.
Yeah.
But in order, the idea of witches and the word is spreading around across the country, across Europe, and across all these centuries. It's proof of how massive the idea of and the fear of witches.
Yeah, well, there were trials that were held in Ireland. There were also trials that were held in Germany and obviously London, with those being major cities.
Yeah.
And things like witchcraft happen and still are very, very prominent within different cultures. Like there's specific things within Mexican culture to do with like muerte, which means like death, and there's certain cultures that associate with that word heavily.
Yeah.
There's things in West Africa that are to do with juju and voodoo and dark magic.
Yeah.
And these are all kind of stemming from different versions of witchcraft within these cultures.
That's what I mean. It's all...
Wherever you go, there's going to be stories like this.
It's the same as religion with different gods and, the Satan. It comes in its different forms in different countries, religions. And it's the same as witchcraft. That comes with it.
Yeah.
It's a massive, powerful thing that stem from ideas centuries ago.
Yeah, and one of the victims of it was Molly, and she was eventually found dead in her home by one of her really close friends at the time. And out of suspicion and fear, she was buried without any rites in Brading churchyard, and she has no headstone to mark her grave.
So in Brading churchyard, her body is there somewhere.
And even in death, she doesn't get recognition for the healing that she did do.
Yeah, and that would be heavily recognised now, but prejudice wiped her out essentially. Unfortunately, it did. Which brings us on to the next section.
Boo or bust. So, for this episode's Boo or Bust, with witch sightings and things being quite difficult to come across, especially nowadays that is becoming more popular and more accepted and less spooky and stereotypical, it's actually quite difficult to find videos of spooky, scary witches unless you're looking into the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
So, for this Boo or Bust, we actually have another folklore coming from the Isle of Wight, and this one is purely folklore. It hasn't got anything to kind of back it up like the Molly Downer one does.
Hasn't really got any historical, like
accuracy to fall back on.
100%.
So we're going to let you guys decide if this is a boo or a bust of a folklore story.
So we essentially, for this Boo or Bust, we want you to let us know whether you think that this is a boo or whether you think it's a bust. We'll obviously give our opinions. But obviously in future episodes, we really encourage you to reach out to us. You can DM us and, send us
your
pictures, your stories. We'll let you know what the episode is. And keep an eye on our socials, the upcoming episode. We've got a very, very exciting one coming for you next week.
Yeah.
In which that we would like your stories / your experiences to be included in our Boo or Bust section.
So if you want to hear your name on our episodes, and if you want us to deep dive into your ghostly little story, then DM us, follow us on Patreon, and send us all of your pictures and your experiences, and we will discuss it and get right into it with you.
Absolutely. So that brings us on to the folklore tale of Gretchen Eve, who is a cave witch on the Isle of Wight.
So, as Sam just mentioned, Gretchen Eve is a so-called witch who lived in a cave near Freshwater Bay on the Isle of Wight, and she was considered a helpful healer, much to the likes of Molly Downer.
Yep.
And she was known to the local villagers as a healer, and people actually sought her out to help them in curing their ailments, basically.
So just any ailment, whether it is probably psychological, healing, physical healing,
any illnesses,
ailments, she would be your go-to.
Yeah.
She is the one to go to.
Like how some countryside towns have their local witch doctor. She was the witch doctor, essentially. And unfortunately, due to ongoing prejudice, the folklore tale alludes to the idea that despite her gracious acts of kindness, the very villagers that she helped ultimately turned against her. So the specific reasons for this shift in sentiment aren't really detailed in the known accounts, but it does reflect a common narrative in folk stories about witches. So again, it's what we've been saying all along, is that this narrative and this fear is prolonged through centuries. And the narrative is that fear and superstition at the time overcame gratitude.
Yeah, and I think that's also quite clear today with many things that go on today. I think more people are fearful and superstitious
100%
about whether it's politics or whether it's fear mongering on the news or whatever.
And that
fear obviously often overcomes that sense of gratitude for what we do have. It's dangerous.
And when you aren't grateful for things, it often ends in a bad way.
It does.
And that was especially the case in Gretchen Eve's case, where in a cruel act of persecution, the villagers reportedly burned Gretchen alive inside of the cave that she lived in.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So now it's said that her spirit haunts the land around Freshwater Bay, particularly in that cave, which there are so many caves around there, nobody knows exactly which one it is. But it serves as a ghostly reminder of the villagers' betrayal.
You know, if you, everyone listening now would like us to go and find this cave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there are caves down by Freshwater Bay, but I'm sure we can probably try and find
Yep.
the cave that Gretchen Eve, you know, from Isle of Wight folklore experts. I'm sure that we can contact some. Maybe we can do a special episode.
Mm-hmm. If you'd like to see a special episode where we go and actually try and find the places that we do talk about, go onto our Patreon, pay less than a coffee to follow us on there, and that is where we will be eventually posting video content of us going to these places, if that's what you want to see.
If you want to see it, let us know in the comments. DM us, write to us.
Or even if you know about places and you're from the Isle of Wight or even from England and you know places that you would want us to visit or you think would be cool for us to research, let us know. DM us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, anywhere where you can send a message.
Your support helps us massively, and it will allow us to go and do these things and create better content for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're so passionate about all things, you know, superstitious, supernatural, spooky, horror, scary.
And so is your nan.
So is your nan, who we keep referencing.
So get her to send us stories.
Please, 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 get her on Instagram.
As much as we joke about it, genuinely, it will be your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great aunties and uncles, and even just your parents themselves who
Cousins,
will have
dogs, cats, fish.
These stories of the paranormal and of the supernatural, of witches, of werewolves, of anything
Oh, a little teaser.
weird and wondrous.
Yeah.
Let us know.
We want to know.
Wherever you are. Even if you're on the other side of the world, drop us a little message and let us know. And that brings us into the next section of the podcast, the Silver Scream. So, for this Silver Scream, as we usually do, I have a little movie quote for you. But we did hold a poll earlier on Instagram.
We did.
And we gave 4 options for the film that people thought we were going to use in the episode this week.
Yeah.
People answered more well-known film out of all of them, The Blair Witch Project. However, that isn't the film that we're going to be talking about today.
Blair Witch Project will be a subject of one of our episodes in the future.
It definitely will be, because we've already planned them out, and The Blair Witch is one of the films we will be talking about in the future, but not today.
Not today.
So, Sam, if you could tell them the 4 options that you put on the poll so that people can go and comment right now what they think the film is about before we announce it.
I'm going to leave you with a little quote after I announce the films on the poll.
And I'm going to whisper it just like they do in the film so that it gets you even more into that immersive mindset of where did this come from.
So the 4 options that we gave was The Craft, The Witch, The Blair Witch Project, and Hocus Pocus. And out of those, which one do you think it is? We'll give you a little clue from this quote.
So the quote reads, "Wouldst thou like the taste of butter, a pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?"
Very nice.
So,
Full on ASMR right here.
for ASMR content, if you want that from us, go onto Patreon.
Scary stories in ASMR.
Less than a cup of coffee.
Absolutely. We're happy to do that for you. So, can you guess what that is? We'll do a countdown. 3, 2, 1.
It is The Witch, the 2015 Robert Eggers film.
It is his first feature film
Mm-hmm.
and debut at Sundance Film Festival, and I believe it won him Best Director.
As it should.
Very, very disturbing film.
Very eerie.
It very much leaned into all of, very much steered away from many stereotypes, but it very, very much leaned into
all the things that we've just been talking about.
Accounts of witches, back in Old England, and that's what his goal was, very much to make it a very
as realistic
accurate
as possible.
And obviously we spoke last week about his adaptation of Nosferatu.
Don't worry, we aren't Robert Eggers obsessed. I mean, yes, we are.
We are.
But there will be different films that we're talking about. It just so happens that these two fit the criteria the best.
And we found that The Witch, in terms of its accuracy to accounts was the one.
Yeah.
You know, it's out of all the many, many, many adaptations of witches, we found that this one would be a proper freaky one for you guys to have a listen to. So,
for those of you that don't know, the plot summary for the film goes like so. It is set in the 1630s, New England, and the film follows a devout Puritan family who is exiled from their plantation and is forced to homestead near a foreboding forest. The family descend into paranoia and despair when their newborn son vanishes under the care of their oldest daughter, Thomasin, who is played by Anya Taylor-Joy, for those of you that don't know. She's an amazing actress, so definitely go and check it out. As their crops fail and other bizarre events occur, the isolated family begins to turn on one another, suspecting that an evil force from the woods, or even one of their own, is to blame. The children's paranoia escalates, leading to the accusation of witchcraft against Thomasin, their older sister. And there is a culmination at the film's ending of all of these events, but I won't tell you what it is. You will have to go and watch it.
It's very, very depressing, sort of descent of, madness. Exactly. Madness and superstition and fear is a massive thing in this film, and I think that illustrated through all the actors and directing and the set, and it's very sickening. And it leans into all of these different accounts and what a witch truly is, according to all these old texts.
Yeah.
So going along along this angle of the production and the style of the film, like I said, it was Robert Eggers's directorial debut,
and he also wrote the screenplay for it as well.
Yeah. It's a very complex screenplay in terms of it's not very accessible in terms of its language, because it's uses Old English, and it's taken from texts and accounts from the time, as it's specified in the end from Robert Eggers himself,
as they were taken from real life, like witch hunting pamphlets like we were talking about earlier. And it does focus on 17th century folklore, so the 1600s, which would have been when this started, and also kind of
the fear was probably in its prime,
in its peak. This was the peak of when everything was happening, and Robert Eggers has directly taken loads of information from this era and brought it back to life.
He has. The world is so captivating, and in order to do that, it is a massive sense of immersion had to be done, and so we feel that we are part of the period.
Yeah.
And we could feel the fear of all the characters, the family of the time. So he only used natural lighting and candle lights to light up an indoor space, which modern standards, that's quite risky in some ways, when sets are dark, or often people and directors and film companies would use artificial lighting to simulate candles or the moonlight.
Well, artificial lighting is promoted by most people and most companies because it's more reliable than these natural sources.
This film is 10 years old this year, but again, he wanted to fully immerse in that darkness and that real sense of it's very what's the word? It's very intimate. It's very claustrophobic. It's
really claustrophobic. It's just engulfing, I think, is the way to describe the entire film. You feel engulfed by the darkness the entire time that you're watching it.
The forest is the whole way around the farm, because they are obviously set up a farm out by this forest, and there's no clear way out. It's like they're surrounded by this constant dread that's always there.
Always watching Mike Wazowski.
Yeah, Mike Wazowski isn't in it, by the way, but that is a good
Anya Taylor-Joy is, though.
She is.
And she was obviously one of the main points for this film.
This is her feature film debut as well. So it was a massive film for her, and talent shines all the way through. She goes very much from one end to the other, X to Y, in terms of scale of acting and character development. It's a brilliant movie, and no wonder Robert Eggers was became the director he is now in the horror world. He is one of the most, if not the most, biggest horror directors of the modern age.
And one of the other kind of elements that really shocked me when I watched this was, obviously we spoke about how it's quite difficult to understand a lot of it. Even us being English, obviously it's not the same type of English that they used to speak back then.
No.
As Old English is its entirely separate language. But the fact that it was set in kind of New England, which is obviously in America, and it was a northern family that had moved from England to America. The accents in the film make the language even more difficult to understand, even from an English perspective. But it's just so well carried out.
It's enough that you can still understand what's going on. You don't have to understand and be an expert on understanding these
Puritan beliefs or anything like that.
Or the exact way of the language, and how English language was constructed back in the 17th century. It's done in a very, very tasteful, clever way that you can follow along. Especially
because I feel like a lot of things that are set in medieval times are focused in cities or kingdoms or bigger towns.
Usually within the fantasy genre, it's usually fantasized, isn't it, to
and
some degree?
They're not really focused on these tiny little individual stories that
a family drama, essentially.
That are family dramas, and this kind of was proven to be even more real in that respect, as it was actually based off of a real case that did happen.
It's loosely based on something that actually did occur. Because obviously Robert Eggers, as many of you horror fans probably know, is that he loves research and folklore. That he prides himself on being very, very detailed in his research. He doesn't want to miss a single nick. That every tiny bit of clothing that you see, every bit of costume or set or item or ornament
very
in a house,
particular and very detail oriented.
You make sure that it is very accurate to that time.
And one of the main things where we were saying he took actual documents from this time, he took court records from where they were convicting these alleged witches. He took personal writings from Puritan diaries that spoke about daily anxieties and religious paranoia and the beliefs that they had from colonists and all these types of things. In amongst all of that was actually the Elizabeth Knapp case, which is from 1671, and it was this film was basically shot in resemblance to the events that happened to this family in this case. And the Elizabeth Knapp case talked about a 16-year-old girl who was a servant in Groton, Massachusetts, and it was meticulously documented by her master, Reverend Samuel Willard, when she started to experience demonic possession. And a lot of the behaviors that she was having was throwing fits and having these inhumane shrieks and having hostile behavior towards him. Later got published in a book, and this provided insight into Puritan beliefs, as it was obviously at that same time period of the 1600s, and all the beliefs that did surround possession and the devil. And it was a really significant precursor to the Salem witch trials and all the events at that time. And that story directly influenced The Witch.
Yeah, and you can see that in terms of a lot of, shrieking. There's scenes of fits and hostile behaviour, which often, that's a lot of many witch trials and witch cases back in that era often talked about these types of behaviours from said witches. But this particular one, happened around the same time that The Witch is actually set, and obviously focuses on a young teenage girl that's sort of going into adulthood.
Yeah.
So you can definitely see the crossovers and the inspiration from this case.
100%.
Through The Witch.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely amazing film. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I don't know where it is currently in terms of where we're recording this. But obviously you can buy it on Prime, you can download it, or as we would highly recommend, buying things on Blu-ray, physical media. Once you've got it, you've got it forever.
Mm-hmm.
We love physical media.
We are very big advocates for physical media.
Yeah, you own it.
You do own it.
As Christopher Nolan once said, it can't ever be taken away from you. And streaming, you don't get the quality of how it's intended to be, which is in the best quality possible. So watch it on the biggest screen, best quality system you've got.
Yeah.
And you got it forever once you own it.
Obviously people can take it from you if they come and rob your house.
And if they like the film,
yeah,
I like that film, I'll take it. I would take someone's Witch Blu-ray.
But if someone is going to rob your house, taking your Blu-rays is probably like the least of your worries. So maybe it's not a bad thing. The Witch would definitely be one that they would take if that was the case.
I would say so.
Mm-hmm. And
going along the same lines, we move on to the next section, which is Shivering Soundtracks.
So for the Shivering Soundtracks, we obviously have the soundtrack that goes along with the 2015 release of The Witch, and the composer for this was Mark Korven.
So director Robert Eggers intentionally excluded electronics and traditional harmonies, pushing Korven to craft a minimalist sound using unusual instruments, which if you go and listen to it, you'll understand. Is you don't want any electronic or traditional sort of sounds in it, because the film itself without the music is so unbelievably immersive.
Yeah.
You hear the music, it's so unsettling, and it's full of really beautiful yet tense textures of sounds, and it's very, very uneasy to listen to.
Mm-hmm. And especially the parts where there are big gaps of silence.
Yeah.
In between the composing, it's not like it's always there. Sound. There's a complete absence in certain scenes, which makes it even more
just frightening,
gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
When it does come
back,
you
don't know what to expect, when to expect it, and it gives you that constant sense of unease.
Mm-hmm.
And often the music will, appear and rear its ugly head, even when things don't actually happen, or when things might look like they're happening.
Which are the perfect times for it to come back.
Exactly. So, about the soundtrack, it's very minimalist and it's got a discordant approach. Like I said, all the electronic instruments and traditional sounds and harmonies and melodies, gone. Robert Eggers didn't want any of that kind of stuff.
Rightly
he wanted
so.
it to be, quote unquote, tense and dissonant. So it led Mark Korven to focus on creating an unsettling and very, very atmospheric soundscape rather than conventional music cues, because it's got, I'd say that again, the film is all about building and driving that tension the whole way through. So things like soundscapes rather than melodic music writing is much more important in a film like this. Yeah,
and I think especially for a film of this caliber, where it's got a very quite simple idea behind the tale that it's telling. It's got a very simple setting in the lifestyle and the time period that they're trying to recreate, because there's not a lot of colours or threads or props that they're needing to buy, because it is about a family who's kind of living in poverty at the time. It's in a very bleak environment. It's just a forest in the middle of nowhere and a crop field that's around them. And it just means that this attention to detail that Robert Eggers is now famously known for, he's taking all these simple ideas and crafting them on such high levels that they just become their own individual pieces.
Yeah.
And it's just the entire approach of less is more.
Yeah.
And that's got that is written all over this film, I think, in such an amazing,
Absolutely.
creative and definitive way.
Yeah. And we were listening to the music whilst we were creating the research and gathering all the intel for this.
And
I decided, I was like, let's immerse ourselves in this
the world
of the witch, but also like such an accurate, like historically speaking, piece of music in terms of what would have been around.
And even without the visuals, it's still just as eerie.
It was very unsettling to the point that I kind of thought, this is kind of making me feel.
We had to turn it off, because it was
off.
making us like feel actually unsettled that much.
It's so immersive, but yet it is very, very unsettling.
And it's the same with the visuals when there are those scenes of just complete and utter silence.
And something horrifying is happening in the silence.
Yeah. Or even if there isn't, and it's just showing the forest, for example, and it's just complete silence, that kind of underlying sense of
uncertainty,
dread and uncertainty just lingers within you.
Yeah.
And I feel like every aspect of that film brings that.
Yeah. So again, it's like Mark Korven used a very wide variety of unique and ancient instruments, one of which being the very famous hurdy-gurdy, which again is, uses a handle and you sort of wheel it around whilst using your fingers to play notes.
Sorry, I'm never going to get over that name.
Hurdy-gurdy.
Hurdy-gurdy.
Hurdy-gurdy. And it's a string instrument, and you send a wheel round, and it sort of bows it from the inside. It's very, very interesting. The hand cranked wheel.
Yeah.
And it's very of that time.
Yeah, and one of my favourite elements of it was the female choir that he uses in quite a few segments, but more towards the end of the film.
It's very dissonant, and it's not like your typical harmonic choir. It's full of improvisation.
Yeah, and I think especially where like female operatic and like choir voices usually have that quite heavenly
associated
sound
with
to
heaven.
them. Using it for something that's the complete opposite of that,
very, very different,
entirely flips that on its head, and it's used in such a particular way that it does just strike you as like, oh, this isn't nice.
Yeah, and I think it's so clever, just little textures like a choir.
Yeah. So
powerful. And these vocalists, whether it was directed by Robert Eggers, probably would have had a massive influence, obviously it's his film, but Mark Korven would have had some ideas. They were directed to sing, tremble, and quote unquote have fits to create terrifying and chaotic vocalizations, especially for scenes involving the witchcraft in the film itself.
Which is crazy that they were just allowed to completely improvise those bits with minimal direction at all.
Yeah, it's, again, with Mark Korven himself, it was encouraged that he would improvise the style of the music, so all of it could sort of move about in whatever way he wanted during the editing process. So then, you could move that bit of music there, you can move that bit of music there, and it would still have this real sinister feel.
Yeah.
Where the score could evolve with the film itself. And a lot of it was constructed on the apprehension engine, which, if you don't know, go and look it up. I'll leave a link in the description to what the apprehension engine is. But it was designed by Korven, and I think one of his friends who were able to design, actually construct it. It's a very bizarre, very ugly looking thing, but it creates very, very unsettling soundscapes, which the instrument itself is made out of wood, strings, and reverb tanks. So you have springs that wobble, sort of metallic ruler things that get run along it, ebos for guitars that you run along the strings. It's like a weird Frankenstein of different instruments mashed into a box. But yeah, it creates
a Frankinstrument.
That's very good. I didn't think about that. Mashed together as a Frankinstrument type thing to create such an unsettling texture that is sort of overlayered by, you have dark sort of sounding cellos and bass strings, and of course this choir that only appears in like the real tense parts, or when the witch is there. It's almost like a leitmotif.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, it just all together it's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
But yet it is very, very unsettling to listen to.
Which is exactly what you want, especially when you're watching a film that is so heavily kind of influenced by demons and demonic practices and the darker side of witchcraft that was believed to be the kind of sole purpose back then.
Yeah.
And even the like use of tritone in that, and it's like referred to as like diablos in musica, or like the devil in music, which during the medieval period is known for its dissonant, like eerie sound.
I'm pretty sure that back in that day when people would play, it would be, I think it used to be like a crime, or almost like you were like literally not allowed to play the tritone.
Really?
As far as I'm aware, you weren't allowed to play the tritone.
That's insane.
Because
it would
be seen as like association with the devil.
Oh.
Or that you would be sort of essentially conjuring the devil, or, you know, like I said, that you were associating yourself with it.
I suppose that does make sense actually, because one of the kind of main demonic like knowings that people have a lot of experience with is when there is a demonic presence that is kind of active.
Yeah.
They act in threes a lot. Like if you hear knocks in your house and it comes in threes.
Yeah.
It's things that come in threes are usually seen as like a mocking of the Holy Trinity. Because it's the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And obviously tri means three.
Exactly.
So I'm assuming it would be like a 3-chord sound.
Yeah. I don't know the exact musical, like, you know, construction of a tritone. But yeah, it is very, very dissonant in its sound. And if you were to play it, oh boy, there'd be some trouble. I'll tell you that. You know, but again, using that tritone, obviously in modern times, it's used as a tool in films and you know, media to reinforce the idea of demonic influence, which it does in this film.
Yeah.
Very, very nicely.
Of course. And a little actual, like, kind of hidden fact for you is the outro music for the film.
For the end credits.
The end credits soundtrack is called The Isle of Wight.
No, I remember when I first saw it, I think it was must have been 2 years ago, when I looked up, when I was listening to the soundtrack properly, and it caught my eye when I was streaming it on my phone. And I got to the end track and I thought, okay, we're at the end now. And I look at it and it says Isle of Wight, and I thought, I can't believe it. Again, this is something to do with where I'm from.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's probably one of the research points for inspiration regarding music, instruments, and witchcraft / supernatural history.
Of course it must have been, especially where, like we said in the last episode, it's known as Ghost Island over here. And it's not just the ghosts and hauntings that are so popular, but it's also just the folklore.
It's massive for its folklore.
The history of things that have happened here.
Yeah.
So during the like classic old English like period, there must have been so many things that were prevalent at the time.
Yeah.
Like the stories we were talking about earlier with Molly and Gretchen.
Yeah.
All at the same time period. So it's no wonder that they were a great influence for the music behind this.
And to be used as like the outro, you know, end credits piece of music. And it's amazing.
Exactly.
What an amazing soundtrack. So go and listen to the soundtrack. Go and watch the film. It is magnificent.
And that nicely leads us on to our next section of ghostly gossip. So for this ghostly gossip, as we are still in the early days of the podcast and we don't yet have any stories from you guys, which you can send to us on Instagram or Patreon, we have actually gone and found our own story this time. This is a witchy story that we have found on Reddit that Sam is going to read to us all, and then we'll have a little natter about it afterwards. And this is called Witnessed a Witch Near My House with Multiple People. So this is apparently a true account of someone that has posted this online, and we're going to see what we think.
It's from the subreddit Paranormal Encounters, and actually Jodie hasn't actually heard this story yet.
I haven't, no, because we research different parts of this podcast and bring it all together to kind of catch each other off guard with certain things.
Yeah. So we'll leave a link below to this subreddit. You can read all the comments. It's very, very interesting what people are saying about it, but I'll read it to you guys first.
We will also leave a link to the Molly Downer story below if anybody wants to go and read about that as well.
Any of the folklore, we'll leave some articles that you guys might want to read about. Again, all in the description on YouTube. If you're listening on there, go and check it out. So anyway,
back
here
into
we have
the Reddit story.
The Reddit story, again, witnessed a witch near my house with multiple people. And it reads as follows from a user called Violet Strider. I grew up in a rural part of Maryland, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone within 10 square miles. And it took 30 minutes to get to the nearest department store. Our house was positioned between a cornfield and the forest. The road leading to my house was about 6 miles long, and the only people who ever drove down it were the handful of people that lived back there, and the occasional archaeological van that would do digs in the plot next to our house when the farmers would turn the fields over. We had a few paranormal experiences in that house. I'll briefly mention a few of those before telling you the main story behind the title of this post. One day I was in my room upstairs playing piano, and I heard a loud bang on the wall outside my room. My parents said something like, "What the hell was that?" And when I walked out of the room to ask them the same thing, my piano started playing the pre-installed demo songs completely unprompted.
Ooh.
It freaked all of us out enough that we called my brother, who was in college at the time, to tell him about it. And years later, he lets us know that when we called him that night, he heard a deep laugh in the background of the phone call and was too afraid to tell us about at the time.
That's crazy.
Another odd occurrence is when I was sitting in the sunroom and I watched my brother walking through the front yard towards the door. I turned and looked into the living room only to see my actual brother sitting on the couch wearing a different shirt than the doppelganger that walked by the window.
That'll be an episode that's coming soon, guys. Another one about doppelgangers. Little hint there for you.
Yep, a little hint there up to upcoming ghostly, spooky stuff that we are going to be talking about in Bad Boo. Anyway, my parents would also hear me talking in the house pretty frequently when they knew I wasn't home.
So mimics as well.
Yeah. So anyways, in the 8th grade, I had this witch experience that I haven't been able to shake, and I had other people with me.
The fact that other people were with her and they've seen this too is like what makes it shocking.
Yeah. My friend's dad was driving me home in his 3-seater truck with my friend sitting between us. We got to the stretch of the road where we could see my house across the field. They planted soybeans that year so the corn wasn't blocking our view. And in the ditch right by the road was a figure I can only describe as a witch. We all saw her. We drove right past her. The ditch lining the road was about 2 feet deep and somewhat overgrown, and we could only see the upper half of her body, as if she was sitting cross-legged in the ditch. She was wearing an off-white nightgown that was stained brown, and her hair was black and tangled. She was looking up into the sky with her arms extended towards the sky, and she was rocking in a circular motion. I know it sounds effing ridiculous, but all three of us were totally uncomfortable. My friend's dad was rough around the edges, carpenter, no BS kind of guy. I remember feeling really scared when he asked us what the hell was that.
Oh my god.
She didn't look like a homeless person or a drug addict, and we were so far from any town. We literally had never had a single person in the 20 years I lived there wander into our area who didn't belong there. She legit looked like she came from another time period and was sitting in our ditch trying to summon an effing tornado. When we got home, my friend's dad walked us inside, which he normally didn't do because my parents didn't socialise with my friend's parents. He came in almost as if he wanted to kill time to not drive back by her again.
Oh.
He told my parents what we had seen, and we couldn't see it from our house, so we just called the police in case it was someone in need of help. My friend and his dad left after a couple of minutes, and the police came about 20 minutes later and they said they didn't see anyone in the ditch and couldn't find anyone walking in the fields or the roads or in the surrounding area. My friend's dad called us once they got home and said that by the time they drove by the spot on the way home, she was gone.
That was only a couple minutes later.
I truly cannot explain it. My friend's dad has since passed, but my friend said they still talked about it every now and then in the years following. So that is the story.
That's really like creeped me out.
So look, it's interesting. Yeah, it's quite basic, but imagine driving past and seeing.
You can imagine it, like as you're reading.
Very
it.
visceral.
Yeah.
You know, someone in a white gown, long tangled black hair, sort of reaching to the sky.
And in like the middle of nowhere.
In a ditch.
In a ditch.
I mean, obviously there's interpretation to what that could mean, and you know, this person may be saying that it could be a witch, or it could be someone in need of some sort of help. Obviously, you know, from what we're gathering here, it's unusual, isn't it?
Really unusual.
And the fact that, you know, the police went over to the whole surrounding area and couldn't find a single trace of this person.
Especially because something like that is quite like alarming. Like, and I imagine police in the area wouldn't have been used to calls like that.
Yeah.
If they hadn't seen anybody like that in 20 years.
Yeah. It's mad.
That is really mad.
Had someone that commented on this subreddit post. Just in summary, that they had a similar experience, you know, fields on both sides of the road, about 30 minutes from the nearest town. And one of my friends, they say, screams as a man in a long black coat and a black hat with long stringy hair steps out into the road and stares at us.
Oh.
And again, they're saying that, you know, nobody saw anything. You know, he's got a second car to ask what happened, and they said they didn't see anything.
That's insane. I've got like a true belief that when people see things like this and other people don't, it was meant to only be seen by those particular people.
Yeah. It's unusual. I mean, like, you know, without saying, you know, the police went back and checked and there's no one there, or about this one, about someone saying that other people didn't see it, may just be a very, very different story.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be worth saying on here, but because of these details, the fact that this alleged witch / person disappeared and couldn't be seen within you know, minutes essentially of going to check. How unusual is that?
I want to know if anything bad started to happen to them after they had seen it. And they just didn't realise. Or like, was there a tornado a couple days later, weeks later, months later? Like, who knows?
Yeah. And if you guys know the Blair Witch Project, you would know that it was also filmed in Maryland and set there. As far as I'm aware, it was set there. But it was filmed in Maryland, which is where this alleged witch case happened.
So maybe it was the Blair Witch.
That's what people are saying in the subreddit.
Oh, are they?
And the person who wrote the post said, because someone asked, wasn't the Blair Witch Project filmed there? And they said they haven't been able to watch the film because the setting is basically in the woods behind the house they grew up in.
No.
And, you know, they don't need any additional fear when they go visit the parents.
Jesus.
So that adds to the old witchy...
I feel so sorry for that person.
Witchy gossip that we got in our ghostly gossip section. So
can you imagine, like, the forest behind your house being the Blair Witch Forest?
I know. And to have this witch-like...
Yeah.
You know...
To see something like that as well.
Yeah. Without, you know, saying, oh, definitely it was a witch.
I would leave. I would just leave my town. I would move to the other side of the world.
The fact that, you know, again, with the disappearance and not being there when people went to go and search for it, and being in the same place as the Blair Witch Project. How unusual.
And an area like that as well, where it would have been, like, even now they said that she's, like, surrounded by crop fields and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It would have, I imagine, probably have been very, very similar during the 1600s when this was such a popular thing. Yeah. So it would have still been the case back in that time. So it's not surprising that there's things like that there now.
Absolutely. It's, again, it, you know, who's to say, you know, I know we've been saying, you know, it's absolutely horrible, and it very much was with what happened in all the witch trials. But who's to say that where this came from?
Yeah, and it's residual energy, all of these things. Like, it depends on what you believe in, obviously, but I believe that if an unordained amount of bad things happen in one place, that it does stain the energy of the places that you visit, and it's soaked up by the raw materials of the place. Yeah. And that's why when you walk into buildings, it could be completely renovated, but if it's on a bad ground, or if the walls are still from the original house or whatever, and it was, I don't know, the scene of a crime, it's why you can feel weird when you walk in there, even if you don't know anything about it. And it's all about like residual energy. So it could just be that that place is stamped by like baddish things that have happened there.
Yeah.
You never know.
Very, very interesting.
Maybe that's why there are witches there, though.
Yeah.
Because they know that bad things have happened.
And
Maybe they're bad witches.
Certainly not denying the existence of such witches.
Or maybe it was just a crackhead.
Who knows?
Who knows? There's plenty of those in America as well.
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows?
Which brings us on to the next section, Spooky Spotlight.
So for this part of Spooky Spotlight, we would usually give a shout out to one of our Patreon users who has been supporting the podcast through there and has been giving some particular love and attention to Bad Boo and the Boo crew. However, as we don't have any official Patreons yet on our page, and we are still waiting for you guys to send in your stories and
Please
to DM us with some of your information and ghostly pictures and stuff, we are going to be basing this one off of the Instagram poll that we did earlier today. So, at the beginning of this episode, we were under the impression that nobody had actually gotten the answer right yet. But as Sam has just checked, we have one special individual who has gotten the answer right.
And that would be my dad. So, well done, Dad. You got it right. It was the witch.
It was the witch.
Although you may have had an advantage knowing about what we were doing today, you still voted on the poll and got it correct.
Just
and you were the only person that did.
He didn't know about the film that we were doing. He just knew about the theme that we were doing.
So well done, Dad.
Well done, Kevin.
You've done a great choice there. But we also felt that because we had 5 of you lovely people out of a very small following at the moment, so if you haven't followed on Instagram at Bad Boo Productions, please do. We'll leave a link to the link tree in the description right now. But we want to give a shout out to all you lovely people
who did vote,
who have voted and have at least tried to guess.
And technically you did guess one of the films right for an episode, just not this one.
Just not this one. So we're going to run through the 5 people and give a special shout out to all of you. I'll just list your first names, and if you're listening, you'll know who you are, most likely. So, Akvilla, Kim, Callum, Eloise, and Kev, my dad. So, thank you to all of you lovely people.
You are all really very special people who we appreciate and love very, very much. And thank you for supporting Bad Boo and for answering our silly little questions that we post on there.
So if you'd like to get involved in Spooky Spotlight, as Jodie has iterated previously, please get in touch with us, DM us, go on our Patreon. You know, you'll be featured in our Spooky Spotlight on there. Depending on how you participate, whether you send us scary stories or be the first person to send us, you know, some stuff for ghostly gossip or boo or bust. You guys will be appreciated, and we will recognise that because we really want to build this community.
Yep, and even if you want to follow us on TikTok or Instagram, if you see any reels or any stories that you think would be interesting, just forward it to us, drop us a little DM, and we will check it out, as it could be really helpful to one of our episodes, because we really want to make this be able to integrate with you guys and your interests too. So if you find anything that you think could be of good use to us, or you just see anything that you think is really fucking cool and you just want us to know about it, then send it through.
Send it in. So, we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and that brings us to the close of today's episode.
So if you have enjoyed tonight's journey into the woes of witchcraft, then don't forget to like, subscribe to the Bad Boo channel, and turn on the post notification bell for updates and new episodes every Friday, as there is plenty more frights, flicks and folklore to come.
You can also haunt us on socials at Bad Boo Productions, where you can interact and leave suggestions for future episodes or contribute through polls and posts.
Just like the one from today.
Absolutely.
So if you're after a bit more creepy content and you do want to interact with these episodes directly, then just remember that for less than a coffee, you can go and subscribe to our Patreon, where we will be doing exclusive content for the Boo crew, which will include videos, stories, live streams, and just chats. We also have a Discord that is directly linked to that group, and it costs less than a coffee to join.
Yeah, and just allows us to make better content for you. It will mean that we can do, you know, video content as well, exploration, film reviews, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
A big horror community for you diehard fans out there.
Yeah.
So that's all from us for this wicked, witchy episode today. And we've been your haunted hosts, Sam and Jodie, unravelling the dark so you don't have to. And until next time, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, the shadows are never empty.